So today I will be talking to you about the MTHFR. I'm Kristinista Health, and I cover a variety of health topics. Remember, this content is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Now, the MTHFR is a gene, and we each have two copies, one from our mother and one from our father. Now, sometimes there are variants on this MTHFR gene, and two variants that have been studied more extensively are the C677T and the A1298C. Now, the C677T is the more defective version of the two variants. It also depends on how many copies you have of these variants. Do you have two normal copies of the MTHFR? Do you have one of the A1298C or one of the C677T? Or perhaps you have one of the C677T and one of the A1298C, or maybe you have two copies of the same variant, C677T or A1298C. Now, if you have one copy, that's called heterozygous. If you have two copies of the variant, then that's called homozygous. So it depends on how many of the variants you have, how much loss of function that you will have. Now, the MTHFR initiates the methylation cycle, a process that provides methyl to at least 200 functions in your body. So if you have two copies of the C677T, you could have 60 to 70% loss of function in that processing. Now, if you just have one copy of A1298C and you have a normal copy of the MTHFR gene, you'll probably just have a small loss of function. Now, there was a study that showed that 25% of US Hispanics are homozygous or have two copies of the C677T, or the more defective version of the MTHFR variant. 9 to 14% of US whites were found to have this variant in two copies, and only 2% of African Americans were found to have this homozygous two copies of the C677T. Now, if you count one copy of any defective version of the MTHFR, it's likely that a lot of the population does have it. So this has brought the medical community to not place a great emphasis on this gene and its variants. But you have to understand, even though most of the population perhaps has it, you might only have 10 to 15% of US whites having it, or only 2% of US African Americans. So the ones with the greatest loss of function may actually be a small portion of society. Now, Ben Lynch and Chris Masterjohn have great information on the MTHFR gene. Ben Lynch in particular has been a pioneer to raise awareness on the MTHFR variants and what helps them, what harms them, and all sorts of information on the MTHFR variants. Now, he wrote this book, Dirty Genes, which you can get a free copy of this book by signing up for an Audible trial on Amazon. Dr. Ben Lynch also has great information on his website, mthfr.net, and he also has an excellent Instagram that I follow. Now, in his book, Dirty Genes, he brings up the concept of dirty genes, that perhaps you might have a genetic propensity to certain weaknesses, but you also have the field of epigenetics to which you might be able to avoid these weaknesses. So you might have a range in how these genetic genes may influence your health. This is another reason why doctors may not place much emphasis on the MTHFR, because it doesn't always consistently show the same loss of function depending on how dirty your genes are. Now, in his book, he references a number of weaknesses that might arise out of the MTHFR variant. Some of these that he lists, although it's not extensive by any means, are blood clots, fertility issues, menstrual cramping, birth defects in pregnancy, miscarriages, preeclampsia in pregnancy, stroke, IBS, and fibromyalgia. It causes the body to have a lesser antioxidant production. It can affect brain chemistry, cell repair, detoxification, energy production, immune response, and inflammation. It can cause such symptoms as depression, anxiety, irritability, a temper, but it can also give a person a great focus, although they might have trouble dialing things down, as Dr. Lynch says. Now, one example of a society that does tend to have a high loss of function, but does not seem to express it very highly, is the Italians. This might be due to the many health habits that the Italians have. Some of these that he lists are they eat lots of leafy green vegetables, they have family and community interaction, they're in a sunny climate, they have foods that are hormone-free and not factory farmed. So what does hurt your function? Well, this can be inadequate methylfolate, B12, riboflavin, exposure to industrial chemicals, psychological stress, hypothyroidism, exposure to synthetic folic acid. I will go over in another video what can help your MTHFR. If you like this content, please subscribe and please like this video. Do you have the MTHFR variant? If so, let me know what type in the comments below.